In this lesson, we're taking a look at 3 more riffs to help you push your abilities forward as a beginner guitar player. This is a direct follow-up to the previous lessons in this series of my beginner course, where we're looking at gradually more complex riffs, so be sure to check out those lessons if you haven't already. Remember, you can brush up on all the techniques and terminology used in these lessons in previous series of the course, which is nice and organised on my channel page, and I've also uploaded some drum tracks at various tempos to my Patreon page, which you can access via the link in the description, so you can download those tracks and use them to practice these riffs along to make sure that you're in time. So let's move on to the first riff of the day, which is Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison. So this riff starts out with what sounds like just a couple of practice runs where he plays through most of the riff but not all of it, and then he repeats that a couple of times and comes in with the full thing. So those practice runs start with 2 hits on the open low E string, followed by 3rd finger playing the 4th fret of the low E, 1st finger playing the 2nd fret of the A string, then the open D string. So all of that together. Then there's a couple of beats rest, it plays the same thing. Then after the next rest, we come in with the full riff. So the full riff starts in exactly the same way, but now we have this little ending on it, which is 4th fret of D string with 3rd finger, 2nd fret of D string with 1st finger, and then the open D string. So if you add that onto what we've previously done, and then there's no rest after this one, it's immediately back to the low E string for the start of the next repetition. So a couple of them in a row would sound like this. So it's really important that you don't leave any gaps in this riff. It's all just 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Even when the riff starts again, you've got to get your pick down to that low E string and get straight back into the next repetition. So taking a look at the picking hand for Pretty Woman now, I'm basically going to give you 2 choices, the first one being all down picks and then the second one being all alt picking. So if we start with all down picks, we've got the 2 open low E strings, then again picking the low E but the 4th fret. Then we're just moving up the strings in pitch, so this time we're moving on to A string. Then we've got the 3 picks on the D string. Then we're straight back to that low E without any hesitation. So doing all down picks in the right hand isn't the most efficient way of doing it, but it might free up a little bit of kind of processing space in your brain to think about the left hand. Just keeps the right hand nice and simple. And I think when I did some transcription of this song and I was watching videos, I think that he plays it as all down picks on the original. So all down picks might get you a little bit closer to the sound of the original track. But I also think it's good to experiment with alternate picking. I did a video on why I think this is a good idea and some good ways to practice it. This riff is another great place to practice alternate picking, so I'd definitely give it a go, especially if it's something you're trying to get better at. So if we put that in, we're going to have down, up, down on the low E string, up on the A string, then down on the open D, and then up, down, up on the 4, 2, and then open D string. So that's down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, and then the pick moves back to the down pick on the low E string. So a couple of times through that, all just alternate picking. So you can see that this is a lot more efficient than doing all the down picks, because every movement of the hand you get 2 notes out of it rather than just 1 and then coming back and having to pick down again. It also helps at the end of the riff, because I'm up picking the open D, it's sending the pick in the right direction to go and get that low E again. So you might find the alternate picking at the end of the riff slightly easier for getting into the start of that next repeat. But there's a couple of options for the picking, and now we're going to move on to the next riff, which is Run to You by Bryan Adams. So for this riff, we've got the capo on the 2nd fret. That's going to get us in the right key for the song. I'm going to give you the fret numbers in reference to the capo as well. So to set up for the riff, we're going to start by placing the 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, but we're actually going to start with the low E string first, then the A string, and then the open D string. Now the reason I like teaching this riff to beginners is because you have to make sure that the open D string is left open and it isn't muted by resting the 2nd finger at too much of an angle so that it sits on the D string and mutes it. So it's quite a good riff for training beginners to make sure that they're in control of what strings are open and which ones are muted. So we've got those first 3 notes, open E, 2nd fret A, and then open D. We then repeat those same 3 notes. And then we descend the strings, so it's going to be the A string next, then the open low E. Okay, so we're going E, A, D, E, A, D, A, E. And that's the picking pattern for the whole riff. All we do for the second half is repeat that picking pattern, but do something slightly different in the left hand. So to start the second half of the riff off, we're going to place the 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the low E string. We're then going to play the E, A, and D strings again. Then we have a little slide where we take this shape and move it up 2 frets. So 3rd finger is now on the 5th fret from the capo, and 2nd finger is on the 4th fret from the capo. And we just finish off the picking pattern that we'd already started. So E, A, D, and then A, E. So even with that little slide in, the picking pattern is the same for both halves of the riff. So if I play the whole thing, okay, the picking pattern is always going E, A, D, E, A, D, A, E, and then you're just slotting in the movements with the left hand to make it work. And once again, this riff is all just 8th notes. It's all 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you've got to make sure that when the repeat comes in that you get right back to that low E string without any delay. So if I just play a couple of those riffs in a loop for you so you can see how they fit together, that would sound like this. So you can hear there's a nice steady rhythm there without any gaps. And I also just want to touch on the sound a little bit. Now there's a bit of palm muting going on in the right hand, but I'm going to show a little bit more detail of the right hand in a second. But in terms of effects, I've got a little bit of delay on, just for a bit of an atmospheric pad. But the main effect I'm using here is a chorus pedal, and that really just gets it sounding a little bit more sonically similar to the original one. So if I put those effects on and play it again, you get this sound. So you can just hear that it sounds a little bit more reminiscent of the original track there. So if you've got access to some effects, try just a subtle bit of delay and some chorus if you've got some, or any other type of modulation effect like a phaser or a flanger might get you a little bit closer as well. But now let's take a look at the right hand. So for the picking on this one, again, there's a few different options. You could once again start with all down picks, especially if you're trying to think a little bit more about what's going on in the left hand. So just... that might be a good place to start, but then you might want to mix it up as you get used to playing the riff. You could try and do all alternate picking again. Feels a little bit strange on this one, not quite as convenient as it was in Pretty Woman, but it's definitely possible. So down, up, 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 down, up. I feel that moving to the low E string with an up pick feels a little bit strange for me. Down, up, down, up. I have to think pretty hard about getting that one accurate. What I prefer to try and do on riffs like this is actually pick in the direction of the next note. So because we're starting on the low E and moving to the A string, I'm going to do a down pick. Then because we're playing the A string and moving to the D string, I'm going to also do a down pick. But then because the D string is the highest note in the riff, I'm actually going to up pick it, and that's going to help send my pick back the other way to the low E string. So 2 of those. Hopefully you can see how there's an efficiency in doing it that way as well. To finish off that pattern, there would be another up pick on the A, and then either an up or a down pick on the low E, whatever felt more comfortable, because the next pick is the low E, the next string, sorry, is the low E anyway, so it wouldn't matter which way you picked it to make it more efficient. So in full, that would be down, down, up, down, down, up, up, and then either an up or a down, and then same again, down, down, up, down, down, up, up. I think I do a down pick normally, without thinking about it. Yep, that way works for me, but you could also try the full down picking or the full alternate picking. Just got to experiment with these things and see what works for you. And one final point, as I touched on before, it does help to do a little bit of palm muting in the right hand for this one. So without any palm muting at all, you'd get this sound. So it gets a little bit kind of crowded and messy. With the palm muting, just tightens it up, makes it a bit more rhythmic. Makes it sound a little bit more cool, so that'll definitely help as well. Now it's time to move on to the final riff of the lesson, which is Walk of Life by Dire Straits. So in the demo for this song, I did a little loop as well and then played the melody over the top. I mainly want to focus on the melody in this lesson, but I will quickly show you how to do the chords as well in case you have a looper pedal and want to try doing your own loop version. So we're going to start with 1 bar of D. We've still got the capo on the 2nd fret, as you can see. Then we're moving to 1 bar of G. Then a bar of A. Then half a bar of G and half a bar of A. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So from the top, we've got D, 1, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, A, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, A, 4, and then you'd click your looper pedal as you strum the D chord again for the start of the next repetition. Now if you want to throw some strumming in, I'm just doing the Old Faithful pattern, but we are counting it in 16ths rather than 8ths, and basically all that means is that you're going to end up doing 2 Old Faithful strumming patterns per bar. So on the D chord, the G chord and the A chord, which are all 1 bar each, it's going to be 2 patterns per chord. So that would be the D chord, same on the G, same on the A, but then when we have the half bars at the end, the G and the A, it's going to be 1 Old Faithful pattern on each one. So G, A, then we're back to the D. So if I put all of that together, we've got so that would be how you play your background chords for your loop. At this point, feel free to either leave the capo on or take it off. There aren't any open strings in the melody, so it makes no difference either way. And just remember that from now on, we're referring to the frets in their normal place, so no longer from the capo. Onto the lead part now, and there are actually only 4 different notes in this melody, so in terms of note choice it's not too tricky. The challenge just comes in getting the timing right and throwing in all the right techniques. So we're going to start with first finger on the 7th fret of the high E string, and we're going to do a sustained note followed by a staccato note. So then we're going to leave a little gap, we're going to move the first finger onto the 7th fret of the B string, we're going to pick that note and then hammer third finger down on the 9th fret. Then we're going to move first finger to the top string, and then we're going to descend through third finger back on the B string 9th fret, then first finger 7th fret B string. So far we've got and then we finish this phrase off with third finger playing the 9th fret of the G string twice. So far we've got hopefully you recognise that as the first part of the melody. So that's the first sort of phrase of the song, of the part that we're playing here. We then have another gap, and you've got to get used to leaving the right length of time between each phrase. You can count it, but I would definitely advise just getting used to the sound of the song and feeling when the parts come in. So definitely listen to that melody a few times and make sure you can really sing it in your head before you play it on the guitar so you know exactly what you're doing. So as we've done so far, the next phrase has got some similar stuff in. We're starting with that hammer on again, so 7th fret on B string with first finger, hammering the third finger down on the 9th fret, and then we've got our 2 notes on the top string again. So that's just a little standalone phrase. If we add that on to what we've previously done, leave the gaps. The third phrase is very similar to the first phrase, but this time we don't have the 2 notes on the top string, so we're starting once again with the hammer on the B string. Then first finger top string, descend through 9, 7, B, and then the 2 notes on the G string again. So that should feel very familiar. We've pretty much already played it earlier on in the riff. And then we leave another gap, and then we've got one kind of final phrase which starts again with the hammer on, first to third finger on B string, first finger on top string. Now we're going to add a new technique. We're going to pull off 9th to 7th fret, so third finger to first finger on B string. Third finger is going to play the G string 9th fret 1 time, and then we're jumping straight to the first finger on the top string and doing that sustained then staccato rhythm from the start of the riff. And those 2 notes are actually where the riff repeats. So by the time you finish that phrase, you've actually already started the next repetition of the whole riff. So if we play the whole riff from the start, it'll sound like this. And then you start it again. So hopefully you can hear how that mimics the original song. Definitely try playing this one either along to the original or along to your own loop, just to make sure you can get the timing and the phrasing right of those different parts. So the picking for this one is a little bit more open to interpretation. You can do most of it as down picks, but I definitely wouldn't try doing all of it as downs. I'm going to start with 2 down picks on that top string though. And then we can down pick followed by the hammer on the B string. And then either down or up pick on the top string. But here's where you need your alternate picking. When you've got those 2 slightly quicker notes on the B string, the 9th fret to the 7th fret, you either want to go down up or up down. And then that'll likely decide which way you pick the G string as well. So you might go down, up, or you might go up, down. Try them both and see whatever feels more comfortable for you. But basically follow that system for the whole riff. So the slightly slower parts you can do all as down picks. But then when you get those 2 quick notes, try and put an alternate pick in. And you might find that the alternate picking just kind of carries on from there. And on the ending, again, you probably want to mix up the picking a little bit, so you might start with down picks. Then you might do an up pick before the pull off. Then it might be an up pick on the G string, followed by a down pick on the high E. So that's the part where you need the accuracy, because you're going straight from the G to the high E. You could call that string skipping if you want, because you're skipping over the B string. But you either want it to be an up-down or a down-up. The down-up might feel more comfortable for the similar reasons to why we had the picking direction in Run to You, because if you down-pick the G string, it's sending the pick in the right direction to then get the high E. So there's a bit of an efficiency there. So that ending part, either a down pick on the G and then an up pick on the E, or an up pick on the G and then a down pick on high E. Got to experiment with this stuff, but on this one I would definitely advise trying to get away from doing all down picks. You want to start integrating those up picks into your playing, but there are some picking ideas for that riff as well. So hopefully that's given you a few more fun riffs to start playing around with a few extra technical challenges to start upping your ability. Remember, you can brush up on all the techniques and terminology used in these lessons in the previous series of my beginner course, which is nice and organised on my YouTube channel page. Feel free also to subscribe if you want to follow along with the lessons, and I would appreciate you giving the video a like if you found it helpful. Remember also that you can download those drum tracks from my Patreon page via the link in the description, and from the next lesson onwards we're going to be looking in a little bit more detail at specific songs, very much like we did with Walk of Life. We're going to be learning the rhythm and the lead parts and mixing them together so you can jam along with more of the song and practice creating your own loops as well, so I'll see you in those lessons.